Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be completing with the OBS revision, and very quickly let us wrap up this session on OBS so that we can start with surgery, right? So before that, this topic, that is general fertilization, I'll be covering in the special session, which is the first aid chanting session. So we'll leave this and we'll just move ahead with placenta. Okay. So the placenta is formed by the cytotrophoblast, and first there is formation of the primary villi, which is at 13 weeks, secondary villi at 16 weeks, and tertiary villi at 17 weeks. Remember, at 17 weeks the weight of placenta equals the weight of the fetus, while at birth this ratio drops down to 1:6, right? If the placenta measures more than 4 centimeters, it is called placentomegaly, which is seen with twin pregnancy, diabetes mellitus, Rh negative pregnancy or hydrops. That is also associated with parvovirus, right? Remember, non-immune hydrops is seen with parvo, while immune hydrops is due to Rh negative pregnancy. And the next cause of placentomegaly can be infection of toxoplasmosis. A small placenta is seen with IUGR and PIH. Right. Fetal part of the placenta is grayish and it is 4/5, while maternal part is red and it consists of lobe and lobules or cotyledons, right? And it constitutes to 1/5 part of the placenta. Now, this question is asked in one form or the other, that the human placenta is discoid, decidual, and hemochorial, right? So, the maternal blood is in the intervillous space. There are 120 spiral arterioles and the amount is 150 ml. These are all fact-based questions, so you should just learn them, right? The uteroplacental flow is 500 to 700 ml per minute, and it is established by day 15. For uteroplacental flow, we check the uterine artery Doppler, and we can look for insufficiency or PIH, right? What is the oxygen demand? It is 8 ml per kg per minute. Fetal blood, it is in the villi and it is 350 ml. The fetal-placental circulation established at day 17 flows at the rate of 400 ml per minute, and it is assessed by uterine artery Doppler. Now, by uterine artery Doppler, we can see any fetal distress, right? Then, what are the layers between the maternal and the fetal blood? We'll have syncytiotrophoblasts, cytotrophoblast, extraembryonic mesoderm, and the endothelium of the capillaries. It is divided into two zones: alpha zone, which consists of syncytiotrophoblasts and is responsible for nutrition, while beta is the thick part that is responsible for the hormone secretion. Then decidual means that it sheds off. So the methods of placental separation are Schultz and Duncan. Schultz is the most common. Here it separates from the central part, and there will be presence of retroperitoneal clots. The bleeding will be less, and the first to come out will be the fetal side, that is shiny. Remember, S for shiny, S for Schultz. Second is the Duncan's method. It is uncommon method. There will be no retroperitoneal clot, right? It is a pair method by which the placenta separates from the periphery. There will be post per vaginal bleed, and the first part will be the maternal side, hence it is dull. So remember, D for dull and D for Duncan's. Let us quickly look at the anomalies of placenta. So normally the cord is attached to the center of the placenta. If it is attached at the margin, then it is called a battledore placenta, and it can lead to cord avulsion. While if if the umbilical cord is first attached to the membrane and then attaches to the placenta, then it is known as velamentous insertion of the cord, and it leads to vasa previa, right? Remember, the differential for a velamentous placenta is a funicular presentation, but how we will differentiate? We will put the patient in Trendelenburg position, and if the presentation is funicular, the placenta moves up and it will resolve in Trendelenburg position, while velamentous placenta will not resolve. All right. So, what is vasa previa? Vasa previa is the loss of fetal blood through the maternal vagina. And how do we differentiate between maternal and fetal blood? Is by APT or clean bought care test, right? Fetal blood, it has HbF, hence there will be no hemolysis, while maternal blood will undergo hemolysis, and the color of the reagent will change to brown. right? So vasa previa, it is of three types: type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1 is associated with the velamentous or the battledore placenta. Type 2 is associated with bilobata succenturiata. We'll look at it right now. And type 3 is with resolving placenta previa, right? Here the investigation of choice would be a Doppler. For managing, we ask the patient to undergo elective C-section between 34 to 37 weeks, and remember, vaginal delivery and artificial rupture of membrane are contraindicated. Now, the other two types of placenta that appear similar are placenta succenturiata and bilobata. Remember, in succenturiata, there will be a small lobe, while in bilobata, the two lobes are equal in size. These two conditions can lead to PPH due to retained placenta after delivery and APH like placenta previa. Then extracorporeal placenta is of two types, circumvallate and circummarginate. Remember, in circumvallate, there will be a valve-like thickening between the fetal and the maternal tissue, and the fetal tissue appears like it is at a slightly depressed level as compared to the maternal. While in circummarginate, there will be no such cord and there would be a smooth transition between the fetal and the maternal placenta. This completes placenta. Now the amniotic fluid, it is secreted by plasma at 12 weeks. After 20 weeks, it is secreted by urine. And remember, the maximum amniotic fluid is present at 32 weeks period of gestation. The most common method of absorption is by swallowing, which starts at 10 to 12 weeks. Right. pH is 7 to 7.5 and tested by litmus paper blue test, which is a test for premature rupture of membranes. Right. The differential for it can be blood, because blood is also alkaline. The second test for premature rupture of membrane can be a Fern test, in which under microscopic there will be ferning present in the amniotic fluid. The osmolarity is 260 milliosmol, which is a marker of renal maturity. The markers for lung maturity are LS ratio. The best is phosphatidylglycerol. The others are lamellar body count, Nile blue sulfate test, maternal fetal skin cell here turns orange, right? And more than 50% will indicate maturity. Clement shake test, where there will be presence of bubbles. Normal amniotic fluid is straw colored, and if it is green colored, it indicates bile, fetal distress, listeria, and transverse lie. Golden yellow is indicative of parvo CMV RH. Tobacco juice is seen with IOD, and yellowish green is seen in post maturity. So, if the amniotic fluid is less, which is the AFI less than 5, or the deepest vertical pocket less than 2 centimeters. Oligohydroamnios. The most common cause is idiopathic, followed by uteroplacental insufficiency. Right. Early onset oligohydroamnios is seen with congenital anomalies like renal agenesis. Here we learn about a syndrome known as the Potter's syndrome, where there will be bilateral 100% mortality, and the management is by termination of pregnancy. Remember, this is different from Potter's sequence, where there is renal problem like a PUV that leads to oligohydroamnios, but it can be corrected. While Potter's syndrome, it cannot be corrected, and there is mortality of the fetus. What are the features? Pulmonary hypoplasia plus renal agenesis plus facial defects, right? This is Potter's syndrome. While posterior urethral valve and other renal problems apart from renal agenesis would be Potter's sequence. This is very important. Don't confuse between the two of them. Okay. In first trimester, the cause of oligohydroamniosis torch. Remember that all the fetal infections, all the maternal infections can lead to oligohydroamnios except parvovirus B19. We'll read about it. Then in third trimester, the causes are uteroplacental insufficiency, premature rupture of membrane, hypertension in pregnancy, post-term pregnancy, IUGR, then Streeter syndrome, which is the amniotic band syndrome. Right. Other causes can be IUD, amnion nodosum, renal hypertension, left heart failure that leads to reduction in cardiac output. Two important drugs, they are very important, that are implicated with oligohydroamnios are ACE inhibitors and indomethacin. this is a frequently asked question with ACE inhibitors, that it causes oligohydramnios, so remember this. Then we manage by giving amnio infusion and termination of pregnancy at 36 to 37 weeks. But if IUGR is present with oligohydramnios, then the pregnancy is terminated at
24 to 37 weeks.
Next is polyhydramnios. Here the fluid is more than 2 liters. That is indicated by amniotic fluid index more than or equal to 25 centimeter and single vertical pocket more than 8 centimeter. Right. It is further classified as mild, moderate, and severe, when mild is less than 10 centimeter, moderate is less than 12 centimeter, and severe is more than or equal to 12 centimeter. The most common cause of mild polyhydramnios is idiopathic. Right. The most common cause of severe polyhydramnios is congenital causes like GI abnormalities, duodenal atresia, where they can show you an ultrasound showing double bubble sign, cleft lip, right, and neural tube defects. Other can be CDH, omphalocele, Rh negative pregnancy. Now parvovirus leading to hydrops, diabetes mellitus, twin pregnancy, right-sided heart failure. Left-sided heart failure causes oligohydramnios, while right-sided heart failure causes polyhydramnios. Renal failure without hypertension, chorangioma. Remember, in medicine, there's an important condition called Bartter syndrome that is also associated with polyhydramnios. How do we manage? We give indomethacin if the fetus is less than 32 weeks, right? It is not given afterwards because it leads to premature closure of ductus arteriosus. If the patient complains of breathlessness, amniocentesis is done, right? For preterm labor, tocolytics and corticosteroids are given. If the patient is in term and is in labor, then controlled ARM is done. This is done to prevent any abruption. If induction of labor is required, then we ask the patient to undergo amniocentesis, then give oxytocin to stabilize the head, and then perform artificial rupture of membrane. All right. Now we calculate the EDD by adding 2 months, 9 months, and 7 days to the first day of the last cycle, or 40 weeks and 280 days. Right. Remember, if the female has a short cycle, then we subtract 28 minus the cycle length of the female, and it is subtracted from the expected EDD. And for long cycle, we add the difference of the cycle from the normal cycle to the EDD. In irregular cycle, the average of previous 3 cycle is taken, and if embryo transfer is done, remember it is most commonly done on day 3. So here the day of embryo transfer minus 16 would be the last menstrual period. So we can calculate the EDD from that. Then the most accurate method to calculate EDD is CRL on USG, ideally between 7 to 10 weeks, right? Remember, then we follow the GTPAL system in India, where G stands for gravida, which is the current pregnancy as well, and all the pregnancies plus current pregnancy, and for twin it is still 1. T is term pregnancy beyond 37 weeks, P is preterm between 20 to 36 weeks, A is abortion less than 20 weeks, and L is the live pregnancy. In outer countries, the GPAL system is followed, where P stands for parity, right? Why it is not followed in India? Because parity is defined as past pregnancies beyond the period of viability, and in India the period of viability is taken as 28 weeks. So there is no accountability for a period between 20 to 28 weeks. Hence, GTPAL system is followed in India. While in US, remember, when you will give US remedy, the GPAL system is followed, where parity is taken, and here the period of viability is 20 weeks. So all the pregnancies less than 20 weeks will be in P, and all those more than 20 weeks will be in P, and less than 20 weeks will be counted in A. Okay. Then grand multipara is more than or equal to 4, and multipara is more than or equal to 2 pregnancies. All right, let us talk about prenatal diagnostic testing. Right. So between 0 to 28 weeks, that is the first trimester, it is done every 4 weekly, 29 to 35 every 2 weekly, and after 36 trimester, it is done every weekly. Right. In initial visit, what all we will do? Hemoglobin, CBC, Rh factor, infectious disease, that is uterine artery sampling, rubella antibodies, HBsAg, HCV. HIV screening can be done, which is an opt-out screening. That is, if a female wants that she should not be screened for HIV, she can opt out of it. Then PAPs can only be done if it is not done in the last 3 years. TD is given in the first visit and the second dose is given after 4 weeks. Now COVID vaccine has also been approved. And finally, blood sugar levels are checked according to DIPSI. Right. Remember, vaccines safe in pregnancy are HIP, which is hepatitis, influenza, polio, and rabies, while the live vaccines are contraindicated like MMR and BCG. Right. Also, this question comes and it is an integration with PSM that yellow fever and typhoid vaccine can be given if the female is traveling to that endemic area. Then between 9 to 14 weeks, or preferably at 11 to 13 plus 6 weeks, the dual testing is done with HCG and PAPPA. The critical cutoff is 1 by 250. Right. It can be combined with an early pregnancy scan or the level 1 scan, which is known as the NT and NB scan. So in this scan, what do is that we take a sagittal section of the baby, right? And behind the neck is present the nuchal thickness. It should be less than 3 mm. If it is more than 3 mm, it is indicative of aneuploidy and congenital heart disease. The other thing that is checked for are the presence of nasal bone, right? It forms an equal to sign, and if it is seen, then the nasal bone is measured, right? Remember, make it a thumb rule that fluid is black on ultrasound, right? Therefore, we ask the patient to fill her bladder so that we can see we can see the other structures clearly, and air is a bad medium for carrying out an ultrasound diagnosis. Hence, it is very difficult to see the bowel if it is distended with air, right? So the nuchal translucency, it will appear as a strip of black band behind the neck, right? Other thing can be done in 10 weeks is the NIPT. It is the most sensitive secondary screening test, right? What is NIPT? It is the cell-free DNA. Then chorionic villi sampling is done for karyotyping. It should be done after 10 weeks, and the most common abnormality, if it is done before 10 weeks, is limb malformations, and overall it is the most common cause of fetal loss, right? Then at 15 to 22 weeks and preferably 18 to 20 weeks, the quad screen is done, right? Here AFP, estriol, beta HCG, and even A are checked, right? Remember, H for high, H for beta HCG, and I for increase, I for inhibin. These both are increased in downs while the other two are decreased, while in trisomy 18 all are decreased. Second thing is the anomaly scan or the level 2 scan. Here the soft markers for aneuploidy. If more than 2 are present, then we go in for the diagnostic test, that is karyotyping, which is done using amniocentesis. Then 24 to 28 weeks, again the 1 hour OGTT is done. 28 to 30 weeks RH negative testing. 35 to 37 GBS culture and a repeat CBC is done. 34 to 40 weeks, right, we do cervical, chlamydia, gonadal and gonorrhea culture, then HIV, RPR again. Then NST, that is the non-stress test. It is done every 72 hours if the fetal movements are decreased, right? So what do we say? We ask the female to press the button when she feels a fetal movement. And modified biophysical profile can also be done as a screening test, which consists of NST plus AFI. Right. So this is done basically when the female complains of decreased fetal movements, and we monitor the fetal movements every 72 hours. And we monitor fetal heart rate with the fetal movement as well. So normally with the fetal movement, there should be an increase in heart rate of 15 beats per minute for at least 15 seconds, which is called as acceleration, right? We look for at least 2 acceleration in 20 minutes. If it is seen, then it is called reactive NST. Otherwise, we call it a non-reactive NST. For non-reactive NST, it is repeated, and still if there are less than 2 acceleration, that is now in 40 minutes, the confirmatory test is the biophysical score or the Manning score. Remember it by the mnemonic TBM is always notorious. So tone of the baby, chest wall movement should be more than 1 per 30 seconds. Gross movements more than 3 in 30 minutes. Then AFI, right? Sorry, amniotic fluid, which is measured by, this is very important, single deep vertical pocket. It should be 2 to 8 centimeter, and N is NST, non-reactive, right? Every one of these parameters is given a score of 2, and out of 10 the Manning score is calculated. More than 8 is normal. Between 6 to 8 it needs to be reassessed, but if the score is less than 6, we say it as a poor biophysical score, and termination of pregnancy is advised. Then CTG or the cardiotopography is done during the labor. Here the parameters are, the first of all, the baseline heart rate. Then there should be beat to beat variability, right? So we can see that if the heart rate or the beat to beat variability, which is 5 to 15 per minute, is present, then it is normal. If it is absent, then C-section is advised. Then again there should be acceleration, which we discussed, 15 beats per minute for more than 15 seconds. And if deceleration is present, it is detrimental. They are of the following types: early decelerations, right? It is what, like suppose this is the contraction. If the deceleration are matching with the contraction or at the same time as when the contraction occurs, then they are called early deceleration, and it is usually due to the head compression due to the Cushing reflex. It is not very harmful. What is to be seriously taken are the late decelerations. So if this is the contraction of the uterus, this will be the deceleration after every contraction, right? Here, here, here. And variable decelerations, they do not follow the pattern of contraction, they can come anytime, right? The cause of late decelerations are uteroplacental insufficiency or maternal hypovolemia. So we'll ask the female to lie in left lateral position, supply her with oxygen, and we will reduce the dose of oxytocin if given. In variable deceleration, the cause is cord compression. This is important, right? Another is a sinusoidal heart rate. This is sinusoidal FHR. This is representative of fetal anemia, and it is seen with RH immunization, Vasa previa, or twin transfusion syndrome, and the management is C-section. So that completes the miscellaneous topics in OPS, and from tomorrow we'll be starting with surgery. Happy learning!